They think excluding me from my own wedding would have no consequences. They were dead wrong. My name is Madison, and I've spent my entire life being the understanding sister. You know the type. The one who always gives up her dessert so her little sister can have two. The one who works double shifts to help pay for family emergencies while her sister gets her nails done. The one who smiles and nods when everyone praises how special and talented her younger sister is, while she's treated like the reliable workhorse in the background. Sophia has always been the golden child, 3 years younger than me, blonde where I'm brunette, effortlessly charming where I have to work for every social interaction. Growing up, our parents made it crystal clear who their favorite was. When Sophia wanted dance lessons, they found the money. When I asked for art supplies, they said we needed to be practical about expenses. When Sophia crashed Dad's car at 17, they bought her a newer one for safety. When I asked to borrow it for my college interviews, they said I should take the bus because it builds character. I learned early that my role in this family was to be the giver, never the receiver. And honestly, I accepted it. I thought that's what love looked like. Constant sacrifice, endless understanding, always putting others first. I worked my way through college while Sophia got her degree funded by our parents. I lived in a studio apartment eating ramen while she got a 2-bedroom condo as a graduation gift. I dated guys who were good enough while she held out for her Prince Charming. And then I met David, sweet, stable David who worked in accounting and brought me flowers on random Tuesdays. He wasn't the type of guy who would sweep anyone off their feet, but he made me laugh and he saw me, really saw me, in a way my family never had. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I cried for an hour. Not just because I was happy, but because someone finally chose me first. The moment I announced my engagement, I knew exactly what kind of wedding I wanted. Nothing too extravagant, nothing that would overshadow anyone else. Just a simple, elegant celebration with the people who mattered most. I'd been saving money for 3 years, working overtime at my marketing job and freelancing on weekends. $40,000, every penny I'd managed to scrape together for the wedding of my dreams. I should have known better than to involve my family in the planning. The first red flag should have been when Mom immediately suggested that Sophia help with the preparations. "She has such good taste," Mom gushed, "and she's been to so many elegant events through her job in PR. She could really help make your wedding special, Madison." Sophia's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Oh my God, yes! This is going to be so fun! I have so many ideas already." I felt that familiar tug in my stomach. The one that always appeared when Sophia got that particular gleam in her eye. But David squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "It could be nice having family help. Less stress for you." So I said yes, because that's what I always did. The second I handed over access to my wedding planning accounts, Sophia transformed from helpful sister to wedding dictator. Suddenly, my simple garden party became a sophisticated soiree. My budget-friendly local florist was replaced with an expensive boutique that Sophia absolutely had to use because they'd done her friend's corporate event. My photographer, a sweet woman whose portfolio I'd fallen in love with, was swapped out for Sophia's connection, who charged 3 times as much but had the right aesthetic. "Trust me," Sophia would say every time I hesitated. "I know what I'm doing." "You want your wedding to look elegant, don't you? You don't want people thinking you're cheap." Every change ate away at my budget, but every time I tried to push back, I was met with a united front. Mom would sigh and say, "Madison, honey, Sophia is just trying to help you have a beautiful day." Dad would grunt from behind his newspaper that the girls know what they're doing. Even David, sweet David, would suggest that maybe Sophia did have more experience with this kind of thing. I watched my simple, heartfelt wedding transform into something I barely recognized. The venue changed from a charming historic mansion to a sleek, modern event space that felt cold and impersonal. The menu shifted from comfort foods that David and I loved to some fusion cuisine that sounded pretentious and tasted like cardboard. My carefully curated guest list expanded to include Sophia's entire social circle, people I'd met maybe twice in my life, but I told myself it was fine. It was just one day, right? The marriage was what mattered, not the wedding. I could endure one day of feeling like a stranger at my own celebration if it meant keeping the peace with my family. I should have realized something was seriously wrong when Sophia started referring to it as our wedding in casual conversation, or when she began posting on social media about all the planning we're doing with pictures of herself at vendor meetings I wasn't even invited to, or when the wedding dress I'd chosen, a simple but elegant A-line that made me feel beautiful, was suddenly not quite right for the vision and needed to be exchanged for something more sophisticated. The final straw should have been when I realized I hadn't made a single actual decision about my own wedding in over 2 months. Everything was being filtered through Sophia's expertise, and somehow my opinions had become irrelevant suggestions that were politely acknowledged and then ignored. But I kept telling myself this was normal. This was how families worked. This was love. I was so incredibly wrong. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was having my final dress fitting when my phone buzzed with an email notification. I almost ignored it. I was struggling with the bustle on a dress I still didn't love, feeling overwhelmed by all the last-minute details that somehow I wasn't allowed to handle myself. But something made me check. The sender was Sophia. The subject line read, "Wedding update, important." I opened it right there in the fitting room, still wearing the dress that cost twice what I'd originally budgeted for. "Hey, Madison, so I've been thinking about the wedding logistics, and I've decided it would be better if you didn't actually attend the ceremony. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. The venue is going to be super crowded with all the important guests, and honestly, it might be kind of awkward having you there since you haven't really been involved in the final planning anyway. Plus, David's parents are already nervous about meeting everyone, and having extra people might just add unnecessary stress. So, what I'm thinking is, we'll set up a really nice live stream, like professional quality, and you can watch everything from home. It'll actually be better because you won't have to worry about your hair or makeup or anything, and you can just relax and enjoy seeing everything come together. LOL. I know it's unconventional, but trust me, this is going to work out so much better for everyone. The important thing is that David gets the wedding he deserves, right? Let me know if you have any questions. XOXO, Sophia. I read it 3 times before the words actually registered in my brain. My sister had just uninvited me from my own wedding, not suggested I skip it, not asked if I might consider staying home. She had decided, unilaterally, that I would not be attending the wedding I had planned and paid for. The wedding where I was supposed to marry the man I loved. The wedding that had consumed every spare dollar I'd earned for the past 3 years. I stood there in that expensive dress, staring at my phone, feeling like someone had just punched me in the solar plexus. The seamstress knocked on the door. "How's everything fitting, honey?" "Fine," I managed to croak out. "It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. I drove home in a daze, Sophia's email playing on repeat in my mind. The casual tone, the way she'd framed it as a favor to David, the assumption that I would just agree, the complete absence of any acknowledgement that this was insane. When I walked into my apartment, David was on the couch grading papers. He taught high school math. He looked up with a smile that immediately faded when he saw my face. "Babe, what's wrong? How did the fitting go?" I handed him my phone without a word. I watched his face change as he read. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something that looked like anger. "What the hell is this?" he said finally. "My sister has decided I shouldn't come to our wedding." "She's decided? Madison, this is insane. You know that, right? This is completely insane." It was the first time in months that someone had validated my feelings instead of telling me to go along with whatever Sophia wanted. I almost started crying right there. "I know," I whispered. "But David, she's planned everything. She knows all the vendors. She has all the contacts. If I fight her on this..." "If you fight her on what? Attending your own wedding?" David set the phone down and took my hands. "Madison, I need you to hear me. We are not having a wedding without you." "That's not a wedding. That's a very expensive party that happens to have a groom standing at the altar talking to himself." "But the money?" "Forget the money. We'll elope if we have to. We'll go to Vegas tonight. But we are not doing this. I loved him so much in that moment, but I also knew my family. I knew that if I pushed back now, there would be drama, tears, guilt trips about how much work Sophia had put in, how much money had already been spent, how I was being selfish and ungrateful. "Let me just think about it tonight," I said. "Maybe there's a way to work this out." David looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. "Okay, but Madison? You know this isn't normal, right? You know that sisters don't usually steal their siblings' weddings?" That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Every time I'd said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I'd swallowed my preferences to keep the peace. Every time I'd told myself that being understanding and flexible made me a good person, a good sister, a good daughter. I thought about the $40,000 I'd worked so hard to save, money that was supposed to celebrate the beginning of my new life with David, money that had somehow become funding for Sophia's vision of what my wedding should be. I thought about the email and the casual cruelty of it, the way Sophia had assumed I would just accept being erased from my own wedding day, the way she'd tried to frame it as a kindness. And I thought about David, who had looked genuinely horrified at the suggestion that we proceed without me. Somewhere around 3 a.m, I made a decision. I was done being understanding. I was done being flexible. I was done sacrificing my happiness for the sake of family harmony. If Sophia wanted to exclude me from my wedding, then she could have exactly what she'd asked for, a wedding without me. But here's the thing about excluding someone from an event they planned and paid for. When that person is the one with legal authority over all the vendors, all the contracts, all the payments, the logistics become very interesting very quickly. I spent the next morning making phone calls. "Hi, this is Madison Chen calling about the Morris and Williams wedding on the 15th. Yes, that's right. I need to cancel our booking due to a family emergency." "Hello, this is Madison regarding the catering for next Saturday's event. I'm going to need to cancel our services." "Hi there, Madison Chen here about the photography package for the 15th. We're going to need to cancel that booking." One by one, I systematically dismantled the wedding that had been built with my money but stolen from my heart. The venue coordinator was sympathetic about the family emergency. The caterer was professional about the cancellation. The photographer was understanding about the change in circumstances. Most of them had cancellation policies that would cost me, but I'd recover about 60% of what I'd paid. 60% of $40,000 was still $24,000, more than enough for David and me to have a real wedding later, one that we actually planned together. By noon, I had canceled every single vendor associated with the wedding. Every single one. The dress could be returned. The decorations hadn't been delivered yet. The flowers were canceled. The music was canceled. The photographers were canceled. Even the officiant was canceled. There would be no wedding on Saturday. When I finished the last phone call, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. My phone started ringing around 2 p.m. It was Sophia. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again, and again. The voicemails started frantic and escalated to hysterical. "Madison, what the hell did you do? The venue just called and said you canceled everything. Call me back right now." "Madison, this isn't funny. You can't just cancel everything. Call me back." "Madison, I swear to God, if you don't fix this right now, I will never forgive you." I listened to each voicemail with a sense of calm satisfaction. For the first time in my life, Sophia was experiencing the consequences of her actions without me rushing to fix everything for her. David came home from work to find me sitting peacefully on the couch, eating leftover Chinese takeout and reading a book. "How was your day?" he asked carefully. "Good," I said. "I took your advice." "Which advice was that?" "About not having a wedding without me." I looked up at him with a smile. "Turns out, when you uninvite the person who planned and paid for everything, you don't get to have a wedding at all." David stared at me for a long moment, then started laughing. "You canceled everything." "I canceled everything." "The whole wedding." "The whole wedding." He sat down next to me and pulled me into his arms. "I have never been more attracted to you than I am right now." "Good," I said, snuggling into his chest, "because apparently we're going to need to plan a new wedding. One where the bride is actually invited. My phone buzzed with another call from Sophia. I hit decline and turned off the phone. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. I woke up Saturday morning to the sound of my phone buzzing like an angry hornet. 17 missed calls from Sophia, 12 from Mom, 8 from Dad, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. The voicemails started playing automatically as I made my coffee, creating a symphony of panic that was honestly the best alarm clock I'd ever had. Madison, pick up the phone. The venue says everything is canceled. There has to be some mistake. Sophia's voice was higher pitched than I'd ever heard it. Madison, honey, please call us back. There's been some kind of mix-up with the wedding vendors. Mom's voice trying to stay calm but with an edge of hysteria creeping in. Madison, what the hell is going on? Your sister is having a complete breakdown. Dad, never one for subtlety. I sipped my coffee and listened to each message with the detached interest of someone watching a particularly entertaining reality show. It was fascinating, really, how quickly the family dynamic had shifted now that their plans were falling apart. The calls kept coming. I watched my phone light up with Sophia's contact photo, a selfie from her last vacation where she looked absolutely perfect, and hit decline each time. There was something deeply satisfying about having control over whether or not I engaged with the chaos. Around 9 a.m., someone started pounding on my apartment door. Madison, open up! I know you're in there! Sophia's voice carried through the thin walls of my building, probably waking up half my neighbors. I took another sip of coffee and turned up the volume on my TV. The Today Show was doing a segment on wedding planning stress. How apropos. The pounding continued. Madison, this isn't funny anymore. You need to fix this right now. I found it interesting that even in crisis mode, Sophia still assumed I would fix everything for her. Even after she'd literally uninvited me from my own wedding, she expected me to swoop in and save the day. My phone rang again. This time it was David. Hey, babe, I answered. How's your morning going? Well, I've gotten 6 phone calls from your mother asking if I know why you've lost your mind. 3 texts from your dad telling me to control my woman, and your sister showed up at my apartment at 7 a.m. crying about how you've ruined her life. Her life? I laughed. That's rich. I told her she had the wrong apartment and should probably figure out whose wedding she was actually planning before she worried about where to find you. I love you. I love you too. Also, your sister is currently screaming at your front door loud enough that I can hear her from the parking lot. Should I call the cops for a noise complaint? I considered this. Nah, let her tire herself out. She'll leave eventually. And she did. After about 20 minutes of increasingly dramatic threats about how I was destroying everything and how I'd pay for this, the building went quiet again. My phone immediately rang. Mom this time. I decided to answer. Madison, thank God, what is going on? Sophia says you canceled the entire wedding. That's right, I said calmly. I did. Silence. Then, what do you mean you did? Madison, the wedding is today. No, Mom. There is no wedding today. I canceled it. But why? Why would you do that? I felt that familiar urge to explain myself, to justify my actions, to make everyone understand and approve of my decision. But for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't owe anyone an explanation for protecting myself. Because Sophia uninvited me from my own wedding, so I took her advice and didn't come. I also made sure there wasn't anything for me to not come to. Madison, that's insane. You can't just cancel an entire wedding. Think about all the money. I did think about the money, Mom. It was my money, every single penny. And I decided I'd rather lose some of it than pay for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. But what about David? What about all the guests? What about me? I interrupted. Did anyone think about me when Sophia decided to exclude me from my own wedding? Did anyone think about me when she took over every single detail of the day I'd been planning and saving for? Did anyone think about me at all? Another silence, longer this time. Sophia was just trying to help. Sophia was trying to have the wedding she wanted with the money I earned. And you know what? She can still have it. She just needs to pay for it herself. I hung up. Within an hour, the calls started coming from vendors. Apparently, word had gotten out in the wedding industry that there was a major event cancellation, and some vendors were trying to figure out if they could salvage parts of their day. The venue coordinator called to confirm the cancellation and to go over the refund policy. Professional and polite. I appreciated that. The caterer called to ask if there was any way to save the food order since they'd already done the prep work. I felt bad about that one. It wasn't their fault my sister was a narcissist, but there was nothing I could do. The photographer called to express sympathy for whatever emergency had caused the cancellation and to assure me that my deposit would be refunded according to our contract. It was fascinating how professional and understanding all these business people were about my decision to cancel, while my own family was treating it like I'd committed some kind of war crime. Around noon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Madison Chen?" "Yes." "Hi, this is Jessica Chen. I think I might be your cousin. I'm supposed to be at your wedding in like 3 hours, but I just got a text from someone saying it's been canceled." I recognized the name. Jessica was my dad's brother's daughter, someone I saw maybe twice a year at family gatherings. We'd never been particularly close, but she'd always seemed nice enough. "Yeah, it's been canceled," I confirmed. "Oh no, is everything okay? Did something happen?" And for some reason, maybe because she was far enough removed from the immediate family drama, or maybe because she sounded genuinely concerned rather than accusatory, I found myself telling her the whole story. "Wait," she said when I finished. "Your sister uninvited you from your own wedding?" "Yep." "The wedding you planned and paid for?" "That's the one." "And your parents thought this was okay?" "They thought I should be understanding about it." Jessica was quiet for a moment. Then, "Madison, that's completely insane, like genuinely crazy behavior. I thought something terrible had happened, like someone died or there was an emergency. But your sister just decided you couldn't come to your own wedding?" It was such a relief to hear someone validate what I already knew, that this situation was absolutely not normal. "Yeah, that's pretty much it. And now everyone's mad at you for not letting her have a free wedding." "Pretty much." "That's..." She paused, clearly processing. "That's the most entitled thing I've ever heard in my life. Good for you for canceling it." "Thanks. I'm starting to think I made the right choice." "Oh, you definitely did. Can I ask what you and David are going to do now?" "We're thinking Vegas next weekend," I said, surprising myself. "Something small and fun, just the two of us." "That sounds perfect. And honestly, if this is how your family treats you, maybe it's better they won't be there." After I hung up with Jessica, I felt lighter somehow. It occurred to me that I'd been so focused on the immediate family reaction that I hadn't really thought about what the extended family and friends would think when they heard the real story. My phone rang again. This time it was Sarah, my maid of honor, who I'd been friends with since college. "Madison, oh my God, I just heard. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Better than fine, actually. I cannot believe Sophia did that to you. When I got her text about the wedding being canceled, I immediately called David to make sure you were both okay. He told me what really happened." "What did he tell you?" "That your psycho sister tried to steal your wedding and uninvite you from it, so you canceled the whole thing, which, by the way, is the most badass thing I've ever heard." I laughed. "I'm not sure it's badass. I might have just ruined everything." "Ruined what? A wedding that you weren't allowed to attend?" "Madison, you didn't ruin anything. You saved yourself from the most humiliating day of your life." "The family is pretty upset." "Of course they are. They were planning to have a $40,000 party on your dime while treating you like garbage. Now they actually have to face consequences for their behavior." "When you put it like that." "There is no other way to put it. Madison, I've watched your family treat you like a doormat our entire friendship. I've bitten my tongue so many times because I didn't want to interfere. But this was the last straw. I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself." "Really?" "Really. And you know what? David and I have been talking, and we want to help you plan a real wedding. Something that's actually about you and him, not about managing your sister's ego." I started crying then. Not sad crying. but the kind of crying that happens when you realize how many people actually care about you versus how many people just expect you to serve their needs. By evening, I'd heard from most of the intended wedding guests. The responses fell into 3 categories. The family members who were angry at me for ruining everything, mostly my parents and their immediate circle, who kept asking how I could be so selfish and vindictive. The family members who were confused but supportive once they heard the real story, like Cousin Jessica and my Aunt Linda, who called to say she'd never liked Sophia anyway and was proud of me for finally growing a spine, and the friends who were universally supportive and several of whom admitted they'd been worried about how weird the whole wedding planning situation had seemed. The most interesting call came from David's mother. "Madison, dear, I just wanted to call and tell you how proud I am of you." I was shocked. David's parents were traditional, conservative people who valued family harmony above almost everything else. I'd expected them to be horrified by the whole situation. "You are?" "Of course I am. What your sister did was unconscionable. No one should have to tolerate that kind of treatment from family. David told us the whole story, and honestly, I'm just sorry we didn't realize sooner what was happening. I was worried you'd think I was being dramatic." "Dramatic?" "Honey, you paid for a wedding and your sister tried to exclude you from it. The only dramatic person in this story is Sophia. You handled this with more grace than I would have. Thank you. That means a lot." "Now, David mentioned something about Vegas next weekend?" "We were thinking about it." "Well, if you decide to do something bigger later on, you let me know. I'd love to help you plan a real wedding, one where the bride is actually invited." So I was laughing and crying at the same time by the end of that call. Sunday morning brought a different kind of phone call. This one was from Sophia, but she sounded different, less hysterical, more calculating. "Madison, we need to talk." "I don't think we do." "Yes, we do. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. People are taking sides, and it's tearing the family apart. People are taking sides because you did something inexcusable, and I responded to it. Look, maybe I handled the whole thing badly, but you have to understand, I was just trying to help. The wedding was getting so complicated, and I thought if we simplified things, by excluding me from it, it wasn't supposed to be permanent. I thought you could watch the ceremony online and then join us for the reception later. You were overreacting to the email." This was fascinating. Sophia was actually trying to rewrite history in real time, acting like uninviting me from my own wedding ceremony was some kind of reasonable compromise. "Sophia, you told me not to come to my wedding. Period. There was no mention of a reception later. You told me to stay home and watch it on Livestream like it was a Netflix show. Well, maybe I didn't explain it clearly, but you explained it perfectly. You wanted a wedding without me, so I gave you exactly what you asked for, no wedding at all." "Madison, you're being ridiculous. We can fix this. We can book a new venue, get new vendors. It'll be more expensive, but if we all chip in..." "We?" "The family. We can all contribute to make this work." And there it was. Even after everything, Sophia still expected other people to pay for her vision. She'd learned nothing. "Sophia, I'm not contributing another penny to any wedding that you have any involvement in planning." "But it's your wedding." "No, it was my wedding. Now it's just an expensive mistake I'm moving on from. David and I are going to Vegas next weekend. We're going to get married by Elvis in a chapel that costs $50, and it's going to be perfect because we'll both actually be there." "Vegas? Madison, you can't be serious. That's so tacky." "You know what's tacky? Uninviting someone from their own wedding." I hung up. The final call I received that weekend was from David on Sunday evening. "So," he said, "I've been thinking about Vegas." "Having second thoughts?" "Actually, I was thinking we could make it even better." "How?" "What if we invited Sarah and Mike? And maybe your cousin Jessica? She seemed really supportive when you talked to her, and my parents want to come if that's okay with you." I thought about it. A small wedding with people who actually cared about both of us, people who wouldn't try to take over or make it about themselves. "That sounds perfect," I said. "Really?" "Really. You know what the best part will be?" "What?" "No one there will be attending because they feel obligated. Everyone who shows up will actually want to celebrate us." "That's going to be a nice change." David? Yeah. Thank you for having my back through all of this. I know this isn't the wedding you signed up for when you proposed. Madison, I signed up to marry you. Everything else is just details, and honestly, I'm excited about Vegas. It'll be fun, it'll be ours, and most importantly, my bride will actually be there. I love you. I love you too. And babe? Yeah. Next time your sister tries to exclude you from something, I vote we just exclude her from our entire lives. I laughed. You know what? That sounds like the best wedding gift anyone could give us. As I hung up the phone, I realized something important had changed over the past few days. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about whether my family approved of my choices. I wasn't anxious about maintaining peace or making sure everyone else was happy. I was just free. Free to make decisions based on what David and I wanted. Free to surround myself with people who actually cared about my happiness. Free to stop setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. The wedding I'd originally planned would have been beautiful, but it wouldn't have been mine. It would have been Sophia's vision, funded by my money, with me relegated to the role of grateful recipient rather than honored bride. The Vegas wedding we were planning would be small, unconventional, and absolutely perfect, because it would be ours. And the best part? When people asked me about my wedding day, I'd be able to honestly say it was everything I'd ever wanted, not because everything went according to plan, but because I'd finally learned to plan for my own happiness instead of everyone else's comfort. Sometimes the best decision you can make is the one that disappoints the people who were never really thinking about you anyway.